Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success.
Well, the US Defense Secretary was clear. The strikes had devastated Iran's nuclear program. But Tehran has denied it suffered a major blow. Tom Clark reports now that the technology that the US used to carry out the stunning operation.
Statement that the whole thing has been obliterated implies that, yes, Fordo might have been, but the actual material, certainly the knowledge and many enrichment machines have been moved, and hence that may be a setback for a few months, but it certainly has not wiped out their capability.
2 men sat in the dark, 30,000 feet over enemy ground, and watched the night turn into day. The crews trailing the strike would describe it to the nation's top general in a single line: the brightest explosion they had ever seen. It looked, they said, like daylight, in the middle of the night. That flash was the end of a 15-year plan. But the story everyone tells stops at the bomb. What almost no one talks about is the 37 hours before it. The deception, the ghosts, and the one thing that could have killed these crews long before they reached the target. This is how 7 of the most valuable aircraft on the planet flew into one of the most defended countries on Earth and came home without a single shot fired at them. The hand you're meant to watch. Just after midnight, 7 flying wing bombers lifted off from a quiet base in the American Midwest. Before they left, the crews kissed their families goodbye, not knowing when or if they'd be back. Then came the oldest trick in warfare: show them one hand while the other does the work. While the world's cameras and Iran's trackers followed a package of aircraft heading west toward the Pacific, the real strike was already turning east, dark, silent, radio quiet, starting an 18-hour run to the far side of the planet. The decoy was known to a handful of planners. Everyone else was watching the wrong hand. The ghost. So how do you fly a machine the size of a small airliner into hostile airspace and stay invisible? You delete everything a radar wants to see. No fuselage, no tail, just a pure flying wing. A 172-foot blade of radar-absorbing skin. Engines buried inside the wing so radar never catches the spinning blades. Even the refueling port folds flush after every top-off. The result is a bomber with a radar signature of about 1/10 of a square meter. A machine that huge, showing up like a large bird. A radar that could track a fighter from 100 miles out might not catch this one until it's within 5. And by 5 miles, the bombs are already falling. Everything about this jet is built to be a rumor. The long dark. Now picture the next 18 hours. One crew of 2, crossing an ocean in the dark, a war waiting at the other end. There are only 2 of them, so they trade off. While one flies, the other sleeps. On a cot the size of a yoga mat behind the ejection seats next to a chemical toilet. Privacy, as one veteran of the jet put it, is the other guy looking away. Flight surgeons sign off on stimulants, go pills, to keep them sharp across a day and a half in the seat. And several times along the way, they do the hardest thing in aviation: refuel. Imagine two cruise ships easing up next to each other at speed. The bomber's shape throws off a wave of air that shoves the tanker around, so both crews fight just to hold position. 10 feet apart, in the dark, again and again for over 30 hours. Clearing the path. Here's the part the highlight reels skip. Iran did not have an empty sky. On paper, it fielded a layered defense. Russian-built long-range missiles, plus its own capable homegrown SAM, with reach in the hundreds of kilometers. Real teeth. Anyone who tells you Iran was defenseless is lying to you. But that network had been bleeding for 8 months. Strikes the previous fall wiped out its last Russian batteries, and in the days before this mission, more than 120 launchers were destroyed. The wall was already full of holes. And still, the bombers didn't go in alone. Ahead of them flew stealth fighters whose only job was to listen, to find every radar that switched on, fix it, and pass the picture back over data link. Behind them came the wild weasels. Fighters that bait a radar into lighting up, then kill it with a missile that rides its own signal home. Think rodeo clowns. Wave your arms at the bull, draw the charge, put it down before it reaches you. These were the only non-stealth jets in the package, and one pilot nursed his fighter home on fumes, escorting everyone else out first, and later pinned on the Distinguished Flying Cross for it. Layer by layer, they carved a corridor. So when the bombers pushed through, Iran's missiles, in the chairman's own words, never saw them. Not because the defenses were fake, because they'd been blinded, degraded, and outflown all at once. The hammer falls? Fordow, centrifuge halls, buried 80 to 90 meters inside a mountain. That's a 25-story building of solid rock stacked on top of you. You don't blast that open from the surface. You need a key. That key weighs 30,000 pounds, as much as 2 loaded fighter jets, and exactly 1 aircraft in the world can carry it. And it doesn't blow the mountain apart. It threads the mountain's own ventilation shafts, bores through the rock, and waits, a delayed fuse, until it's deep inside. Then it detonates in a sealed space. Fire a rifle into a closed steel drum instead of an open one. The pressure has nowhere to go. It slams off the walls and multiplies. 12 went into Fordow, 2 more into Natanz. And far to the west, from a single submerged submarine, more than 30 cruise missiles were already skimming toward Isfahan, reading the ground like a blind man reading Braille, matching every ridge to a map. What they saw. And this is the moment the whole story was building toward. From a trailing cockpit, the crews watched the first weapons go to work below them. At that altitude, there's no sound, no shockwave, just light. A white flash big enough to erase the dark and turn the night sky into noon for one heartbeat. The brightest thing, they said, they'd ever seen. 7 bombers, 7 separate bomb runs. All of it inside about 30 minutes. One retired pilot of the jet called that the most historic part of the entire night. What no one agrees on. So did it work? Careful here, because this is where the story gets argued. The US government called the damage extreme. One site destroyed, the other 2 badly hit. A leaked intelligence assessment was far more cautious. A setback of months, not years. The international nuclear watchdog landed in between, calling the damage enormous. The honest version, as a piece of flying, the mission was flawless. Whether it ended Iran's nuclear program or merely bought time is still being fought over. Anyone who tells you it's settled is selling you something. 37 hours after they left, the bombers came back. 2 quiet formations settling onto that same Midwestern runway. And this time, the families were there, flags flying, tears flowing. The wing commander had 22 years in uniform. He said the biggest moment of his career wasn't the bombs, or the mission, or the history books. It was the instant he knew his crews were safe. One of the airmen said the whole night felt like the Super Bowl. Thousands of people, one team, one shot. Because behind the stealth and the physics and the 30,000-pound bombs, this came down to something small and human. 2 people in a dark cockpit, a cot the size of a yoga mat, and a very long way home. And that's the real weapon here. Not the bomb, reach. The ability to launch from the middle of one continent and put a warhead on a mountain on the other side of the world, then bring your people home. The jet is just how it gets delivered. So here's my question for you. If you'd been strapped into that seat, 37 hours, one shot, no room for error, could you have kept your hand steady? Tell me in the comments. And if this is the kind of story you want more of, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.